everybody. My name is Peter Wehrwein. I am Senior Editor of Managed Healthcare Executive. And today I have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Sumit Dutta, who is Chief Medical Officer at Optum Rx, the PBM brand arm of Optum, which is, of course, part of the United Health Group, an important player in the healthcare sector. So thank you for making time today.
Thank you, Peter.
So today we're on the brink of having a second COVID-19 vaccine. The Moderna vaccine seems headed for approval. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit from the perspective of Optum Rx about the where the Moderna vaccine might fit in and any role that your company might have. It's my understanding that the Moderna vaccine it doesn't need to be kept at that super cold temperature that the Pfizer vaccine does. And someone told me recently that for that reason, it's more likely to be distributed to, administered by, at pharmacies and sort of the hinterlands, if you will, because you don't have the super cold storage issue that you do with the Pfizer vaccine. So I wanted to get your take on sort of the COVID-19 vaccines and whether my thumbnail about Moderna is correct.
So, Peter, thank you for the question, and it's a very good question. In fact, some members of my team listened into the FDA comments on the Moderna vaccine that you referenced, and to your point, the vote was very favorable. You're also correct as it relates to the cold chain, as we call it, that that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine that's available today and is being people are getting vaccinated, that that needs to be stored in a colder fashion and actually has time to use elements that are very important around it. So just refrigeration requirements that are very cold, minus 70 degrees Celsius and beyond, versus the Moderna vaccine that might be, not might be, but will be at slightly warmer temperatures. So what I will say though, is today in the United States, there isn't enough vaccine. So both vaccines will be very important as a way for frontline workers, people at most risk, like those living in nursing homes, to immediately begin being vaccinated with either one of those that the FDA have approved. So that's the first thing. I'd make one other comment too. You talked about the cold chain. I think the other interesting thing about those two vaccines are the way that they work, which is novel. They're called mRNA vaccines. And certainly the initial reports are that they work very well. So we're excited with the results. We're excited about this technology.
And does Optum Rx have a direct role to play in terms of the vaccine distribution and administration, or is this happening sort of something that you're aware of and we're all pretty excited about, I think, but it's not sort of something that's falling directly into your what your business does?
So I would say that Optum Rx and PBMs do play a direct role, and I'll talk about how. And I will also say that United Health Group as an enterprise clearly plays a direct role in many aspects. But let me focus my comments on the pharmacy benefits management piece that you asked about. So today, we have processed claims for the Pfizer vaccine that's available on the market. So that highlights the readiness in terms of claims processing that's required. And in fact, it educates the listeners to all of the work behind the scenes that may seem arcane that allow actually someone to get a vaccine beyond the physical vaccination. And so let me start with that and move further back and talk about all of the ways that we've monitored. I mentioned we listened to the FDA comments. So we advise our clients about the vaccines. We recently had a call with over 650 people on it. We've done that all the way through the pandemic to make sure that people are aware. And then we have an important role in making sure our members understand the value of taking the vaccine, which I think is a very important societal role.
So have you used any particular communication channel to talk to your members about vaccines, or are you working with other groups to sort of, maybe deal with vaccine hesitancy, as people are calling it, or even some of the, the alt-right falsehoods that circulate on the internet regarding vaccines?
Yes, this is something I think deeply about, and my colleagues here at OptumRx. And there are many ways that we're using. Obviously, I mentioned we do calls with our clients and the consultant community to educate them and make sure that they have the information that they need to communicate to their membership. We also have many communications that we put together from our drug intelligence group that then get repurposed for content for our members. We inform our call center representatives, for example, for questions that come in. This is all a part of the work that is behind the scenes to make sure that we're prepared for the inevitable questions that people might have around reactions to the vaccine, how does it get paid for, et cetera. I think there's another important thing that we're working on that that I'm excited about and proud about, which is using our analytics to make sure that people get that second dose. So as you know, there are 2 vaccinations that are required approximately a month apart, and using our data to ensure that we are doing everything possible along with the stakeholders so that our members get that second dose and drive that adherence is another important thing we're working on.
Yeah, the tricky business of making sure that people come back for the second dose. I guess that's in something that happens in sort of routine childhood vaccinations, getting people to come back for the booster and whatnot. But here we have a situation where we're working with adults and it's a mass campaign. It's interesting that you referenced behind the scenes work. It's, we have this massive effort and it's really in some sense the whole healthcare sector that has to kind of get into motion on it to make it all happen. So, I think history is going to look pretty kindly on this part of the pandemic that a vaccine was developed and distributed really in pretty remarkable way. So I wanted to shift the focus of our discussion slightly to just a little bit of discussion about how the pandemic has affected what you do at OptumRx. It's my understanding that, because of the initial lockdowns and then sort of general reluctance for people to go into spaces, that many that there's been a shift towards virtual services and mail order pharmacy um, as a as the channel to get people their medications. So could you just tell us a little bit about how OptumRx, that pivot that you've had to make by virtue of healthcare delivery, in this case, medication delivery, has shifted as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic?
Certainly, Peter. And I think you rightfully point out that the pandemic has changed all of us. And certainly we here at OptumRx. But in some ways, it has reinforced what we already do. You know, we are really purpose built for situations like this pandemic. It may be like the behind the scenes piece that I mentioned around making sure that our claim system can adjudicate. It can also be our community behavioral health pharmacies when there's more vaccine available, maybe a part of the solution in administering the vaccination. But it is also this point that you're making around how people seek to get care and have services delivered to them. Uh, as we think back and reflect towards the early days of the pandemic, there were many stay-at-home orders, a lot of fear and misinformation, to your earlier point, misunderstanding. And that was an opportunity to uh, have people get their medications at home, sort of a renewed understanding that home delivery of medications is a valuable way to get medications. What we found is really interesting. We found two important things. One, we found that member satisfaction improved during this period, getting medications from home. We measure Net Promoter Score. It went up 12%. And the second thing is we found our adherence improving. So mail has delivered improved adherence. Get your medicines at home. It's one less thing you have to think about. So that was the second benefit that our members got as they transitioned services to home. The other, I'll give two examples. One is the site of care where members receive their care, as I mentioned. So we have services like our home infusion services. Many more medications are being infused today, and the ability to not have to go to a place where there might be, more people with infection and have it at home. All of a sudden the value of that kind of a service becomes important. And then we extended the hours for those people who still felt comfortable at an infusion center, extended the hours and ensured that we had a good place for them to go. But I will give you one final example of change that I'm so proud of this team. We make calls to elderly patients to review their medications. It's called a comprehensive medication review. And one of the things that we did is we changed the scripting so that we would ask a question about the social isolation that many elderly people felt as they were forced to be at home. And what we found was at the height of the pandemic, nearly 20% of people were feeling anxiety or anxiousness, and they were alone, really. So for those people, we were able to refer them to resources in wider Optum, Optum Behavioral Health Line, where they could call 24/7 to get guidance around their thoughts. So that was something that we did. We changed, to your question, the scripting, and again, I'm very proud of that work.